Who will be the final villain of One Piece? Right now, there are only two real candidates, Blackbeard and IMU. And looking at Elbaf, IMU is showing off a level of power that seems impossible to defeat. Exactly what you would expect from a final boss. But that is actually the biggest reason to think the opposite. The real final villain is Blackbeard, and today I'm going to prove it to you with 10 mind-blowing facts. Plus, at the end of the video, I'll share a theory on how to finally defeat the devil inside IMU. Fact number 1. IMU is Elbaf's main antagonist. As I mentioned before, IMU has already revealed his identity and his devastating power in Elbaf. If Luffy fights him during this arc, a second fight in the final war would lose its impact. Luffy would already have experience dealing with his abilities, so there would be no room for surprise left for him or for us. But Blackbeard? That's a completely different story. Luffy still doesn't know how to counter his Yami Yami no Mi. That is the true challenge, and it's a mystery he will only solve when he faces Stitch at the very end of the story. Fact number 2. Inherited wills. Luffy inherited Roger's will, who in turn inherited the will of Joy Boy. They are three versions of the same figure across three different points in history. And the exact goes for Blackbeard. He inherited Shevek's will, who inherited it from David E. Jones. The goal of both Blackbeard and Shevek is to become the king of the world. This proves that in a way, IMU is an impostor. He wasn't the one destined for the throne. Blackbeard, however, must fulfill that destiny, and to do so, he has to take IMU down just as Shevek intended. But how will he do it? It's actually quite simple. IMU is currently in Elbaf, but we've already seen him coughing up blood. Something is clearly wrong with him. It's one of two things. Either Luffy and Loki defeat him and he flees back to Meriyoa, or they stall him until his time or energy runs out. Whatever happens, when IMU returns to Meriyoa, he'll be weakened. We'll see him coughing at blood again in the Room of Flowers, and in that moment, we'll hear a familiar laugh. Blackbeard will have slipped into the Holy Land when IMU was away. This is his moment to fulfill his father's words. He will strike IMU down and become the new king of the world. Therefore, in the final war, Luffy won't be fighting a shadow on the throne. She'll be fighting the true king of the world, Blackbeard. Fact number 3. Solar System references. In the design of the solar system, every major character represents a specific celestial body. We have the three ancient weapons, each tied to one of three planets: Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. For a long time, I've stood my ground that these are Loki, Shirahoshi, and Momonosuke. Then, there are the 5 elders, named after the 5 inner planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, and Venus. And then we have Garlin, who represents the moon. You only need to look at his Earth to see it. The moon is the closest celestial body to Earth, and thus reflected in his new role. Garlin is now the closest subordinate to IMU, the most ruthless and serious of the elders. Oda has been building him up perfectly for us to hate him. This all makes sense because IMU represents the Earth. Even Shevek said it. IMU is the world. He's been ruling over it for 800 years. If you look at the planetary model in Ohara, the Earth is at the center of everything. This is a direct reference to the geocentric model. If you look closely, the bodies orbiting the Earth aren't just moons, they are the planets themselves. There was a time when any thought that differed from this was censored. However, in the future, that censorship ended and the heliocentric model was finally accepted. The one where the sun is the true center of everything, and that sun is Nika. Therefore, Luffy is the sun. If every major player has a place in the solar system, Blackbeard cannot be the exception. But in his case, he isn't just another planet or a moon. He's something far more terrifying. Something that if it appeared in our system, could end everything. It's something tied directly to his own nature. He is the chaos that wants to destroy everything. His fruit is quite literally a black hole that could absorb not just a solar system, but an entire galaxy. So let me ask you, between a character who represents the Earth and a character who represents a black hole capable of consuming all of existence, which one is more dangerous? Which one is more likely to be the final villain? Cosmologically speaking, a black hole is the ultimate threat. The greatest fear is a black hole swallowing the Earth. That is why, without a doubt, Blackbeard is the final villain. Fact number 4. the greatest in the world. Blackbeard isn't just going to fulfill his father's promise to return to Merioa and kill IMU. He's going to steal his power. He will take the devil fruit that stands as the polar opposite to the sun god Nika. We know Blackbeard is destined to have 3 fruits. That's why his Jolly Roger has 3 skulls. But the key here is that these 3 fruits are considered the greatest in the world in their respective categories. Or to put it another way, they are 3 fruits whose very descriptions contain the concept world. Let me explain. The Yummy Yummy no Mi was said to be the most powerful fruit in the world. The Gura Gura no Mi was said to be held by the strongest man in the world, and with it, he was capable of destroying the world. And as for the fruit of the devil, all you have to do is look at its current user, the king of the world. As the final villain, Blackbeard deserves nothing less than that. He will possess the most powerful Logia in the world, the Paramecia capable of destroying the world, and the zone of the king of the world. Fact number 5. Blackbeard's flower. As you may know, Oda often assigns a special flower to important characters in One Piece based on what they represent. Luffy's flower is the sunflower, the flower of the sun. I think it's pretty clear why Oda chose that for him. But here's the interesting part. In the SBS of Volume 95, Oda assigned the hell flower to Blackbeard. In other words, he's directly linking Tech to the devil. You would think that Oda would have saved a flower like that for IMU. Unless, of course, this is another piece of evidence that Blackbeard will kill IMU and become the new embodiment of hell. By defeating IMU, Blackbeard will effectively consume the devil inside him and take his place. Fact number 6. The God Valley Parallel. God Valley was the place where the strongest figures of the previous era collided. The final war we're about to witness will be the modern equivalent, the stage where the most powerful players of this generation meet. And as we all know, Oda loves mirroring scenes. In this scenario, Blackbeard will have killed IMU, stolen his power, and crowned himself king of the world. However, there's a catch. The devil, the actual will within IMU's fruit, will end up consuming Blackbeard. We'll be left with a demonic Tech, more powerful than ever, and completely out of control. This mirrors God Valley perfectly, where we had a demonic Jevek controlled by IMU's influence. And who team up to take him down? Goldie Roger and Monkey D. Garb, who are the exact counterparts to Luffy and Kobe. The future Pirate King and the future hero of the Marines will join forces to defeat the pirate possessed by the devil. Blackbeard is a total parallel to God Valley. But to make it even more epic, I believe Oda will push the battle to a point where Kobe can no longer keep up or has to focus on protecting the innocent. In the end, all hope will rest on Luffy's shoulders, and he will be the one to land the final finishing blow. Fact number 7. The duration of One Piece and the final war. Oda has been insisting for a long time that we're already in the final stretch, and honestly, this makes me think that the story isn't going to be find the One Piece and then travel back to Merioa to fight the world government. That could take way too long. Instead, I believe everything will happen at the same time and in the same place. Laugh Tale will be the stage for the final war. It's where every major power in the world is going to collide, and it's going to be absolute chaos. Think about it. If Luffy defeats Blackbeard there and takes down the devil with him, the world government is pretty much done. While Luffy is busy in Laugh Tale, the revolutionary army will be taking care of the rest of the world. Oda actually said in an interview that the story will end once the One Piece is found. So it makes total sense. First, the massive battle, then the Void Century flashback, and then the moment we've all been waiting for, Luffy reaching the treasure and fulfilling his dream. I'll go deeper into this in a future video, but the timing is key. Besides, there's one specific detail that proves the war happens in Laugh Tale and not Merioa, the Beaver Card. Both the Grand Fleet and Sabo have Luffy's Beaver Card. Now ask yourself, why would Oda give Sabo a Beaver Card if the final destination was Merioa? Sabo has already been there. He knows the way. A Beaver Card is meant to lead you to a place you can't find on a map because it's hidden or impossible to reach. A place like Laugh Tale. That's where the final showdown has to be. And if the war is in Laugh Tale, the villain has to be Blackbeard, the other pirate who's actually racing for the One Piece. Narratively, it just works. Laugh Tale is the heart of the mystery, and the most important event in history has to happen there. An empty island with just a treasure wouldn't be epic enough for 30 years of build-up. All that is to give that island a purpose, and that purpose is the final clash for the world. Fact number 8. The legendary fate for the ultimate power. For Blackbeard to truly become the final villain, he needs to do something truly sickening. We need to see him reach a level of audacity that makes our blood boil. He's not just a rival, he's an absolute monster who will step over anyone to get what he wants. Why? Because just as Luffy has to surpass Roger, Blackbeard has to surpass his father, Shevek. Luffy needs to face Blackbeard when he's in his prime. And how do we know when Blackbeard has finally surpassed his father? By achieving the goal Shevek failed to reach, killing IMU and becoming the king of the world. This is how Blackbeard has always operated. He kills to steal power and move forward. He killed Touch to steal the Yami Yami no Mi. He killed Whitebeard to take the Gura Gura and become a Yonko. And now, he will kill IMU to steal his fruit and become the king of the world. But he's not just doing it for the title, he's doing it for the power. Narratively, the ultimate villain of One Piece needs to achieve an impossible feat, something that leaves us speechless. And the most impossible feat of all is killing the character we've been told is the all-powerful, invincible king of the world. You see, Oda has basically handed the key to the ancient weapons to Blackbeard on a silver platter. We're talking about the most terrifying weapons in existence, the kind of power that can literally destroy the world. Just think about Caribou. Oda didn't spend years building up Caribou's whole spy plot for nothing. He did it so Caribou could eventually deliver the locations of Pluton and Poseidon straight to Teach. And let's be real, if Blackbeard gets his hand on two of them, he's definitely going to get the third. And that brings us back to IMU. As I explained in my last theory, the third weapon is likely what IMU is hiding in the Holy Land. This is why the legendary fate of killing IMU is so important. It's the only way for Blackbeard to unlock the final ancient weapon. We already know he had Lafitte scouting Marioa waiting for the perfect timing. By taking down IMU, Teach completes his collection and achieves the impossible. This is how he becomes the final villain, the man who holds the power of all three ancient weapons, with his finger on the trigger to end the world as we know it. Fact number 9. A pirate story. There's something we need to keep in mind. At its core, One Piece is a pirate story. No matter how much lore Oda gives us about the Void Century, ancient gods, or lost civilizations, he hasn't forgotten that the heart of his work is about pirates. That's why the final villain for a protagonist who's searching for a treasure must be another pirate, his ultimate rival in that very same race. Oda has carefully developed Blackbeard as Luffy's true mirror and rival throughout the entire series. He's a character who evolves right alongside our protagonist. If he doesn't seem powerful enough to defeat IMU right now, don't worry, it's the same feeling we had when we thought Luffy could never take down Kaido. Both the hero and the antagonist are characters that grow and peak during the story. IMU, on the other hand, is a static character. He has been placed there by Oda with one specific purpose, to be defeated by Blackbeard. If One Piece is a pirate story, then the final battle has to be between the two most powerful pirates in existence. Fact number 10. The Void Century flashback. Finally, we have the Void Century. If all these mysteries are going to be solved in one final arc, everything has to fit together like a puzzle. And I believe Oda is going to do that through one single flashback featuring Joy Boy, IMU, and Davy D. Jones. Think about it. Their stories aren't separate. They all lived, fought, and interacted in the Void Century. Oda isn't going to give us a Davy Jones backstory in one arc and an IMU flashback in another. It's a shared history. This means that IMU's secrets, Joy Boy's mission, and Davy D. Jones' legacy will all be revealed at the exact same time. Since it is one single flashback, there only needs to be one final opponent. Luffy isn't going to defeat Blackbeard and then fight IMU later. He's going to face Blackbeard while he's possessed by IMU's devil. This allows the flashback to focus on the original trio, Joy Boy and Davy Jones, the parallels to Luffy and Teach, and IMU. And here's the most important part, the One Piece. We aren't going to find out what it is before the flashback. That would ruin the mystery. We'll find out at the very end. The flashback will end, we'll return to the present, and as Luffy discovers the treasure, we'll finally understand everything. I can even see the panels now. Joy Boy leaving the treasure 800 years ago, side by side with Luffy opening it today. In the end, everything points to Blackbeard being the true final villain. And look, if you're still not convinced, I challenge you, leave a comment below debunking these 10 facts. I want to see your counter-arguments. As a bonus, I want to share a pretty wild theory with you. First, we have to consider that the final war in Laugh Tale could be a direct parallel to God Valley, where Garlin also played a major role. Oda already told us this character would be huge in the future. But you might ask, if Blackbeard defeats IMU, wouldn't the world government just fall apart? Well, not necessarily. I believe Garlin will be the one to betray IMU and swear loyalty to Blackbeard. We've seen that this man has no soul. He even killed the mother of his own children. While the other elders might die, possibly by Garlin's own hand, he will be the one leading the government's entire military force. And of course, his ultimate opponent will be Dragon, the leader of the revolutionary army. Imagine Blackbeard heading to Laugh Tale, dragging Garlin and all that military power with him. It would be epic to hear Garlin announce a new hunting games on Laugh Tale itself. That is the final war. But finally, we need to clarify something very important. As said, Blackbeard is the final villain. But I trick you, that's not exactly it. If we look at the Elf of Muro, a foreshadowing of the final war, we can confirm one thing. The final villain is the devil. I'm talking about the actual will inside the devil fruit. It's just that when Nika faces the devil in the final battle, it will be inside Blackbeard's body, not Imu's. And this implies something crucial. How do you actually defeat the devil of a devil fruit? We know that when a user dies, that spirit just reincarnates, so Luffy can't just beat Blackbeard. He has to defeat him in a way that the devil vanishes or is sealed away forever. He needs to break the cycle, otherwise the devil would just find a new host, and centuries later, a new king of the world would rise again. The prophecy says this time, everything changes. Nika will win, so what are the options? I have an idea. Luffy is set to face the true legacy of Davy Jones, and in real-world legends, it's said that Davy Jones' heart was locked in a chest and sunk to the bottom of the sea. Maybe Oda is drawing inspiration from that legend. The solution could be locking Blackbeard's heart and the devil inside it into a chest that can never be opened, buried deep under the ocean. And maybe that chest is a very special one, the treasure Luffy finds on Laugh Tale, the One Piece. And that's it for today's theory. By the way, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching until the end. We're so happy with the amazing support you gave us to our very first video. It's been incredible to see the international One Piece community welcoming Miss Zoan like that. We're officially on our way to uncovering the biggest secrets in One Piece, and I'm glad you're here for the ride. There are plenty more theories coming very soon, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. Also, I really want to hear from you. Do you think Blackbeard will actually be the one to kill IMU? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.